Welcome back to What's the FinTech, your FinTech Feel Good show. What's the FinTech is a news and information platform covering the latest FinTech development in Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and Asia. Join us every week for an engaging conversation with various Asian tech figures to discuss about entrepreneurships, emerging technology, customer engagement, and partnerships. Before starting this interview, feel free to share your question in the comment sections, like and share. And today we have Julio and Oscar from Happier. How are you guys?
Very well. How are you?
Really cool. I'm super happy to have you guys. I know that you are super proactive with a lot of companies. Some of my friends are also teaching in your class, so it's great to have ecosystems players being here and sharing some information with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. It's great to be here.
It's a great pleasure to have you. Before we start this interview, maybe what we can do is ask you, both of you, to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, what you have done before, and what you are doing now.
Good. Ladies first.
Okay. So I'm Julio, founder of Happier. I'm originally born in Colombia and grew up in Australia and have been living in Hong Kong for the last 15 years. So Hong Kong's become very much a second home. And my background's always been in HR and recruitment. Been doing Happier for the last 3 years.
Oh, very cool. And you?
So I was born in Korea, raised in Holland, studied there as well, studied in the UK, worked there, and then came to Hong Kong for a job like most people. I started my entrepreneurship in around 2010, so about 10 years ago. The first few companies failed, of course. And then before I joined Julio at Happier, I was a co-founder of The Desk, a co-working space.
Oh, yeah, no, well.
And so I recently joined Julio to dominate the world with the education platform that we have.
So we have two people with a very interesting and international background, right? Colombia, Australia, here Korea, and Hong Kong, and you mentioned Europe as well, right? So very interesting. Maybe before we start to speak about Happier, maybe what I can ask you is about like some of the passion in your life, or what makes you, a bit nervous today.
Shall I start? What makes me nervous today is many things, but at the same time, I don't think. Well, I probably have a little bit of an advantage. I actually run a podcast myself, so it kind of maybe a bit less.
I was going to say, makes me nervous is being on a podcast.
I don't trust you.
Well, it makes me nervous because it's a camera. I'm not used to cameras.
Yeah, it's the cameras that.
Was that cool? That just like to me.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But I forgot the question now. But yeah, what makes me nervous is probably the cameras on me. Not so used to that. I'm not so much in the spotlight. I like to be sort of the second man somewhere hiding behind a corner. But what was the question beyond that? What makes you nervous?
Or maybe you have like anything you would like to share, why you become an entrepreneur, and what was your turning points? Maybe we can speak like that.
So good question. What I guess for me it was a combination of two things. One, when I started my first business, that was just after the financial crisis. So at the time, I had already worked for about a decade in corporate, and like most people during that period, I was thinking already to leave that environment. And I guess the financial crisis gave me a bit of a push. Well, there's nothing to lose. Let's try this. And that was the start of my entrepreneurship. And it wasn't necessarily to be my own boss. It was just a really practical reason that I actually want to do something more creative. And in the environment I was working in, that was supply chain at the time, it was pretty much impossible to make that switch. Because most of my friends said, well, you need a portfolio, Oscar, if you want to do creative work. And I thought, well, the quickest way of doing that is to setting up my own business. I don't need a portfolio for that. But of course, it was a big mistake. But yeah, that was my start of my first business.
And you, Julio?
Yeah, I think for me, I was in recruitment HR for 15 years, and I'd always been working with like so many HR and candidates. And I think when you're working as a recruiter, you get very personal one-on-one with thousands of candidates, like listening to their dreams, their fears. I was, recruited during the financial crisis. So, that was really heavy because you're seeing people made redundant. And I think from when I was somewhere, maybe when I was in Colombia, I think I've always had that sort of, wanting to take adventure or risk, so moving from Colombia when I was 6 to Australia. And so I think combine that sort of streak that I've always had in me, and then just sort of really wanting to just take that plunge and just try and see what I could do to build a platform that this was before COVID. Was I'd spent so much time with candidates and seeing how they weren't in the right job, they weren't happy with what they were doing, they wanted to do something different. And, one by one, you're making some impact, but I wanted to see how I could create a platform where it could have, scale and impact. So I think it was a combination of, my childhood and, desire to kind of help more people and also with technology as well, because the whole world has been moving to more technology. So yeah, it's kind of where it came from me.
Thank both of you for sharing a bit of your background. I think it also helped to put everything together before we can speak about Happier. So personally, I know Happier for the job fair you have done in the past, the website recruiting, like the company going to you, and a lot of communication I saw in the past. But maybe it's better for you to introduce what is Happier and how it started to what is it now.
Sure. So I guess could sort of give a little bit of like the why of, why we created Happier. So I think before COVID, and just like everybody else, I've worked in different companies. I've been, and maybe I've not always been enjoying everything that I've been doing, and kind of jump from one job to the other. And I think that's where I guess the name came from. Was I guess everybody's wanting to be happier, wanting to pivot their career. They're wanting to find somewhere where they sort of have a bit more meaning and purpose. And I think COVID's kind of just, thrown that even more into the sort of front. And, everyone's sort of, they're rethinking about their career and their life. And yes, money is important, but, we spend so much time in our work that we need to think about other things as well. So that was kind of the premise of like, Happier, just trying to build a platform that can help people be happier. And I think the starting point was, okay, the first sort of touch point in the career is that connection with the company or with the job. So I sort of saw that the job platform part was the first part. But then the missing gap was people wanted to find a company and job. They wanted to look at culture and values.
Mm-hmm.
And if they could get better at aligning that, then they're more likely to sort of feel more meaning and purpose. So that was kind of the start. But we sort of see that people are not just one dimension. Then there's a kind of career journey. So you're going to try and get into the right culture and values, have a meaningful job. Then you're trying to keep up to date and be relevant, because if you stop growing, that's when you become unhappy.
Yes.
So growing was a very important part of that journey. And then, career coaching to kind of keep navigating your whole journey. So yeah, that's kind of like the Happier that we're trying to build. It's probably building a lot, but it's our vision that we really feel if we have this holistic platform, it can help people a lot more.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think, Oscar, you're here because you're also the CEO of Happier Skills. So maybe you can explain what is Happier Skills exactly?
I guess the word kind of explains it a little bit, right? Skills in terms of upskilling and reskilling. So the focus with Happier Skills, as Julio mentioned, what we're trying to build is a sort of end-to-end platform. So it's not only for jobs, also for self-development or personal development. And part of that, of course, is upskilling or reskilling. And especially since I've been in the industry, there's been always maybe a complaint from industries or from managers and hiring managers that there is a disconnect between what people study and when they graduate versus what the industry needs. And I guess what we're trying to achieve is to align that better. There's a better connection with the new skills that are needed in today's environment because it's moving so extremely fast. I would say that is one of the objectives that we have with Happier Skills.
Very cool, very cool. I remember seeing like a lot of companies using your services to recruit, and now I understood that the skills that you are teaching is also helping this talent to be placed in these companies like foodpanda or other like crypto companies or other fintech companies. So how do you create that kind of ecosystems where you bring the talent together, the skills together, and the company looking for this talent?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because it's one of the things that's really core and a pillar of like what we're trying to build, which is kind of, it's a platform, but then there's also that community element of it, of like, at the end of the day, it's people that we're building the platform for. So like maybe Oscar can talk a bit more about the skills part, but you know, we're really trying to not just be everything, you know, just in a platform, but trying to, how do we connect people? How do we design things in a way that the dots get connected, you know, because I think people, you know, maybe they find a job through Happier, and then they also need to find like the skills because in the company they find that, you know, maybe they're going to fall behind. So we're trying to create a community where it's about learning, it's about growth, and I think through that people can find opportunities. So that's one of like the pillars that we're building. And then I think the other side is the technology part. Like, how can we sort of make things much sort of more efficient? So, for example, when candidates, when people finish their courses, you know, there's a way that we can let companies know very efficiently, and they can also have the access, you know, very more easily. So, I think those connections using technology, but not to forget about the offline part and the community part.
And about the skills, so?
I think the biggest challenge that we face, of course, we are not the only player on the planet, right, doing education and skills. But one thing that I feel that's missing is where a lot of educational businesses, they focus purely on technical skills, and there's nothing wrong, especially when you upskill or reskill. You need to have like new coding capabilities or digital marketing or UX. But what if you really look at the research, what we really need to learn as well is how we actually learn, right? Because that's a skill that is a lifelong skill to have. So we're trying to go beyond just the information because you can find a lot of information online. If you really put effort in it, you could, let's say, learn to code yourself. Um, so that information is online. But what the difference is, of course, when you do this in person with other people and you learn to understand those behavioral skills, how people communicate, the active listening skills to break down a problem and to solve that together, that's something really hard to do by yourself or through a video. And that's what we're trying to add basically to the courses. It's not just only technical skills, but also social skills.
One of the questions I have is, what is your kind of customers coming to you? Like, what kind of talents are going to you? Are they pretty young? Are they like below 35? Are they just young graduate with 2, 3, 4 years experience? Or do you have also like people about like above 40 years old and they just want to up skills or recalibrate their careers, or maybe like, you know, have a big switch in their life because something happened to their life and they are unhappy to be a banker or to be working on supply chain. So do you have like some data, some kind of profile you can share with us?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So, I mean, I think interestingly, what we do is pretty much it can be for everybody, and we do actually have people at all ages, like above. You know, we had someone 50 who'd been in media and took up a course, and we had someone who was in banking for 20 years and found a job on Happier in a startup. But I guess, you know, in terms of kind of keeping it focused. Like we've always started with doing this for millennials and Gen Z. So millennials and Gen Z, I guess, could be kind of 20 years old to sort of 40 years old, just to kind of give a rough sort of range, which that includes people who have quite a bit of experience as well. So I think the sweet spot is in that range. And I think it's people who've mostly started to enter the workforce already for a couple of years. And then they sort of suddenly realize, okay, I need to think something else. And because everything changes so fast, you know, maybe a couple of years ago, people didn't really know about Web3. And so now people want to get into that. But, you know, you also have to kind of learn that somewhere. And I think that'll continue to happen as well, because there's a lot of jobs that don't even exist today. So, but yeah, I would say that's, you know, that age range is like the sweet spot. But yeah, anyone can learn. Anyone can sort of change their career at any time. So we encourage.
Okay, I remember when I was working on the startups of one of our common friends, I got some interns, and at that time they want to work on the startups and fintech, but the parents were pushing them to go to banks like American banks, and this was what the tiger mom was pushing, or the friend of the tiger mom was pushing, to have a kind of linear careers, to have like a high salary at the entrance, and make money every month. But this guy really want to experience new environments. And at the time, I think number of startups in Hong Kong or unicorn in Hong Kong were pretty low, right? So it's maybe you can see definitely from your perspective the change happening here in the city.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if you want to.
Well, in fact, there is. I guess it depends on the individual, right? Of course, startup life can be really fun, but can also be terrible. So it really depends on the individual. Same with learning, what you learn. But there is, if you go back, because this is a fintech podcast or episode, there is an economist professor. He's I think Nassim Taleb.
Oh yeah,
and he wrote Skin in the Game. And his book, or what he basically promotes, and he's worked as a trader. He actually recommends to start your own business. He basically says the quickest way of learning and actually have accountability is to start your own business. So I would think that if someone says that worked for so long in the fintech or in the finance industry, that's probably something to consider. That I would say now, the way I see it is that you have more choice. Of course, you can. Some people like to start first in a larger corporation, and that's perfectly fine. Some people want to start something in an SME, or maybe some people have the guts to start their own business. I don't think there's a right or wrong in this.
Can we explain a bit how works Happier Skills? So do you have like some coach coming, some teachers, or do you create all the content yourself? And how you find the talents coming to learn the new skills, and how you teach them the skills?
Well, there's a bit of a transformation happening at the moment. At the moment, the way it works is that most instructors, they bring their own experience because they come from big companies. They have a lot of industry experience, and we like to leverage on that. What we're trying to introduce, of course, is a bit more consistency of how the content is delivered. As I mentioned at the start, it's not only the information that they know, but also the experience for students. And I think that is not always so logical for those people who have just worked in a corporate environment. They may have all the knowledge and they're highly intelligent, but teaching is a little bit different. So what we're trying to introduce as well, to coach them as well. It's not only the students, but actually as an instructor, you learn as well about the latest learning science, how people actually learn, because there's a lot of data around this, how we actually learn and what actually happens when we don't understand something versus when we understand something.
Okay, very cool. So you have a network of kind of teacher or coach, right?
We have a network, especially Julio. He's been in the industry for a while as well. So we have a really good network of very highly experienced people, and I think that's also the strength. So we only work with instructors that actually have industry experience.
Perfect, perfect. And for you, Julio, I want to ask you, like, how people come to you or company come to you is by referral, is because some people experience a good, for example, skills class, or maybe they have a good experience by be recruiting by you, and they recommend friends, or they can recommend their company to come. How everything works for you?
So I guess when it comes to the job platform side, I think companies are still kind of more through referral. But we are launching our new platform in a few weeks' time. It's a revamp. We've tried to look at all the things we've learned in the last couple of years and improve the whole experience, and also create a bit more of a seamless experience across the whole like job skills coaching part. But I think also we've been working really hard to have the best instructors, to kind of have the best kind of tools for people. And so I think now we've over the last year or so, we've been getting more and more and more referrals. People who've done 3 of our courses. People whose sisters come in to do our courses. So yeah, I think that's something that we really like focus on. I think once we launch a new platform, we're probably going to ramp up the marketing as well. But I think sometimes it's good to kind of hone things in a little bit before kind of going a bit wild with with the marketing. So yeah, I think we have quite a few channels, and we also got approved by RTTP earlier this year, where the companies can get 66% reimbursed in any training that they do for the employees in tech sort of areas. So I think this is something that we're starting to get more and more companies approach us on this, like big MNCs. So as we start to do more proactive kind of business development or marketing, I think we'll see a lot more from there as well.
Can I ask some question about like how many students you had, for example, or which class is the most popular one, or top 3 class that people are following and coming to you because this one are like a top level?
Sure. I guess because Oscar's sort of more new, I can talk a bit the historical. So definitely the top 3 would be the design, data science, and the coding. Definitely the experience design is an interesting one because like Oscar was saying that you know, we've had so many do the course and become UX designers, but we're having more and more people who come from so many backgrounds. We had a soccer coach. We had like someone working in the co-working space as a community manager. And so what people came out with it is that it teaches you about how to think, how to solve problems. And this is so powerful because this you can take everywhere. So I think as more and more people understand that it isn't just hard skills, then they start to see more possibility. And I think this is where it's really going to change. And for companies wanting to upskill their employees, not just technical, but teach them how to think and problem solve. I think, did I miss any other question? Or
No, okay, it was or maybe like if you have the kind of numbers of students who came to your class, like if it's like 1,000 of them, or if you
well, you know, you can. There's a platform called SwitchUp, which is where it's a global platform where students go and provide ratings on their experience on academies. So, you know, on there we're at about 200. So obviously, not every single student goes and does a rating, but you know, that will give you a pretty good impression of, you know, how many people we've got, and on there as well, we have a 99.6% satisfaction rating. So yeah, I mean, we've been
almost 100.
What's that?
Almost
100.
100.
I guess it's not always easy to make everyone happy. And I think it's actually good feedback because we can kind of see what are the pieces where we need to work around, and it's good you get a lot of good feedback. So yeah, I think we're growing and we've upskilled a lot of people. But I think the journey is only just beginning, I think now with Oscar.
Do you want to supplement, Oscar?
Well, one thing, especially since now we are talking about sort of fintech, one concept that people may understand as well is the social capital, right? People talk about this a lot, but social capital is basically what co-working has also focused on, into community building. And I think especially next year when economies kind of become, let's say, weaker, your social capital into the strength that you have into the social network and the relationships that you have and the communication skills that you can develop become more relevant because you start relying on that more and more. It's not just only the technical skills. So that's why I think people hopefully slowly realize this, right? Especially in Hong Kong. We are all based here in Hong Kong, and we know that one of the strengths of Hong Kong is not just only the money, it's just the speed of making connections and how you can build that trust so efficiently here. And I think is in Hong Kong so unique, and that we want to leverage on that.
It's totally true. I went back to Europe. It's not the same than here. Here, you can send a message to anyone on LinkedIn and you receive directly an answer. In France, for example, it's not the same. Or you need to have recommendation. But even if you have recommendation, sometimes it doesn't work, right?
It can, sometimes take up to weeks before people say, oh, okay, yeah. If you connect with someone, you meet someone in a cafe, say, let's meet. And then 3-4 weeks later, you actually meet, if you meet at all. But in Hong Kong is, you meet someone, you want to go for coffee, it's either the next day, maybe next week latest. People are very, very trusting, but also, they want to do business. Why not?
What difference your company from other companies in the same sector or in the area here in Hong Kong?
For the skills part, I think I've kind of emphasized that, right? So I would say what makes the skills part unique is really that we not only focus on the technical skills, updating that, the latest into data science, UX, and digital marketing and other courses that we provide, but also really looking at the latest developments in behavioral science because it's relevant in terms of that development of social skills or social capital. It's really hard to measure that. That's sometimes why people find it very hard to understand. But at the same time, if I talk about your network when you are here in Hong Kong, I think most people in Hong Kong understand that networking, and that's why networking is so popular in Hong Kong, has really high value. Right, I can meet the CEO any time of the week, anywhere in a bar. There is not this segregation that you have in other parts of the world. You have receptionists and designers and CEOs and entrepreneurs and institutional people all mixing in one place. And I think to really use those skills, how to communicate well and how to build that relationship, is very, very important.
And my next question would be like all your class in Happier Skills. It's a kind of a product, right? So how do you create your product? How you test it? How you enhance this product? Do you do like some different iteration phase of them?
Well, it's a good question. So I just started this not new course, but we already had this digital marketing. But what I've done for this particular cohort, I of course always adapted, right? Because the market does change very fast. So the iterations are constant. So it's the way I typically develop. And I think the biggest benefit of running this skill side or happy skills in terms of the business side is that I also instruct. So I have the experience into the design, but also the delivery. And I think that's relevant to run a business that you actually have skin in the game. So I make constant iterations. It's never, I think that's the benefit of, let's say, that's what also I believe we don't compete with a university. So university, they have to go through a very rigorous procurement process, and that's a really good process. But that's not our market. Our market is where we look at skills that develop extremely fast in terms of coding and digital marketing. So by the time you learn that, and 4 years later, it's actually old. So we can adapt to that and make the iterations overnight. If we feel, hey, this is a new skill that people need to learn, we can just go basically introduce it and just introduce it the week after.
And if we speak about the product, how do you see you will develop the business and the products in the next couple of weeks, months, or years? Where do you see the business going?
Well, I can speak for the skills, and then Julio can speak for the
Yeah.
rest. The way I see this developing is, of course, for now we are based in Hong Kong. It's a big market, but it's of course relative if you look at the rest of Southeast Asia. So of course we're looking to expand, but I think we first need to get the fundamentals. We work on that first, and that's that combination of, one, we want to have the right technical skills and the right instructors, and then people have been talking about this for, I guess, many years. But I believe that community building parts, so the experience that people have before they come to class, in the class, but also after the class, is very relevant. That we tap into that network, right? And I think that's also the strength in terms of the recruitment and employment, that we not only can reskill or upskill, we can also help people to find a new career. And I think that makes it very unique.
Yeah, and I think just to add on in terms of Happier, I think with the revamping of our platform, I think it's very much really focusing on the users. I think with something that we really want to spend more and more time, because ultimately we're trying to make it a better experience when it comes to your career. It's not always that easy. I think a lot of candidates have challenges of, not ever hearing back, and kind of, it's just not a pleasant experience, and it's not something you can kind of like just solve immediately. It's kind of got to go through quite a bit of learning and listening to users and iterating, but ultimately that's what we want to do. We want people to actually enjoy the job search experience, the career experience. So we're just going to that's our focus, at least for very much on product. And I think, of course, we also want to look at geographical, to sort of Singapore, and perhaps other locations as well. But again, we still, Hong Kong is still a big enough place, and we want to kind of get the fundamentals right. But yeah, it's something that's built that is scalable. So that's our next step.
Yeah, step by steps, right?
Exactly.
As you're an entrepreneur and you start your company first, one of my questions I like to ask to all the entrepreneurs coming here is, what challenge did you face when you started?
That's a really good question. I think you need to be a little bit in a healthy way. You need to be a little bit mad to do entrepreneurship because it doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, there's no logic behind it because the chance that you will succeed is very, very slim. Simultaneously, I think it's the most rewarding journey that anyone can experience because it really you build something from the ground up, and I think creating something from nothing is quite amazing that we as human beings can actually do this. And I think that's extremely rewarding, and it's hard to explain. Is I guess some people they have this same question, right? Why do I run this marathon? I'm never gonna do this again, and then the week after they start running again. So there is this sense of achievement, and I think the harder it is, and this is never easy when you're right in the middle of it. Any founder that goes through a really tough time, they think this is I'm just gonna not gonna do this anymore after I get over this. But once they get over that hurdle, they always go back to it. And I think sometimes it is the harder things are, the kind of the better the challenge is. And it sounds very cliche, but I really feel that is one of the best things of entrepreneurship.
And for you, Julio?
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of thought that as well. You've got to be a bit on the line of crazy when you see what you need to go through. But I feel like just to share like very quickly. So when I was in Colombia, I was in an orphanage and I was adopted at 5 or 6 years old. So not many people get adopted at that age. And I think that sort of was a bit of an anchor for me for the rest of my life. So I kind of feel I'm lucky from a very early age. I mean, like you get different cards, but and I think that made me a bit more eternal optimist. So I think I'm more willing to sort of, I believe in something. I believe that something we can create that can make an impact. I'm willing to sort of take the risk because it's worth it. And like what you're saying, it's very rewarding. But I also, because you come across so many challenges and sometimes you get sort of beaten down, but then it's resilience. And I think a bit of that eternal optimism and belief, and that's what kind of keeps me going as well. And I think as well as having people around you that, you can always kind of bounce off and share the journey with, that helps as well.
So I think it brings everything to the value, right? The value you have as a person, but also the value you can communicate to your teams and your company. Do you have like any kind of set of value you like to respect with your company, or share with the employee of your company, and even with a student or a company coming working with you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could start, and it's something that we haven't really yet sort of gone on a wall and kind of. We have done a little bit of that, but we haven't quite. I wouldn't say, okay, these are 4 or 5. However, because Happier is really about helping to espouse to other companies on how they can, create focus on culture, focus on values. And I think, I guess when you're an early stage startup, it should actually already be intrinsic or in the people that you bring on, right? And then you're kind of the summation of the people that you have there. So I sort of, when I think of our values, like I just look around, okay, who's around me? So I can see, for us, definitely it's like, integrity. It's about, definitely around embracing different sort of people, like everyone brings something different. And I think it's about, like maybe like empathy or understanding. And I think we really need to have this because people's careers is very vulnerable, as people pivot in their career. So being able to listen and understand. Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of a few of the values that we have. And I think that, yeah, I mean, maybe you can add as well.
Yeah, to add to you, Julio, what I think is important is, and in fact I spoke about this earlier, that there is a bit of a dichotomy between shared values and the EI, what people talk about, right? About inclusion and diversity and equity. Because on the one hand, if you impose your values on someone else, then it kind of that's the opposite of what you actually should do. That's why I'm always kind of I of course have my personal values, but I think simultaneously I need to accept that everyone is different, whether it's religion or political viewpoint or just opinions in general. And I think that to me, as a business, I think we both share that we really respect that. know, all kinds of different viewpoints. And I'm not trying to impose something on you. I share my opinions and, of course, my viewpoints. But I'll be the last one to say that I'm the right, and that I'm saying the right thing or the wrong thing. But I think there needs to be more understanding. And I think the world that we live in, I think, is very diverse. Some people say that we're very divisive. I would flip it and say, I think we are just have very different opinions. And I think that's a great place to be.
Cool. We are very close to the end of this interview. Oh, yeah. The time is running out. So
Yeah.
we have fun, so it's
Goes
good.
fast.
It's very fast,
Yeah.
right? I know that both of you had a podcast. You had the Happier podcast, and you spoke with me about the art podcast. So maybe you give us a couple of words about what you are doing as a podcast. And I think you stopped it, but you will restart it soon, right?
Yes,
As well.
yes, yeah. It's called Happier Work, Happier Life, and we would just interview people from different backgrounds, like HR, different industries, job functions, essentially just so that others could read about people's journeys, failures, just to inspire and to learn. And then, yeah, we're actually planning to restart, do some more in the next month or so.
And you, Oscar?
Yeah, so I don't want to take the spotlight away from the Happier podcast, right? But and you actually said an interesting thing about inspire. So one of the reasons why I sometimes do different projects, and so I have a weekly podcast called The Last Supper, and that's about people that work in the art world. Because for me, I find a lot of inspiration in art, and that's also the reason why I do this every week. So I speak to artists, curators, collectors here based in Asia.
Do you focus a bit on the NFT or Web3?
As well?
I
Yeah,
got some artists coming here.
as well. Yeah, I had a few episodes around NFT, the Web3, the crypto. So yeah, there's a really interesting overlap between the art worlds and the NFT.
Interesting. I will listen to it, and if you have like some recommendation of every episode we can listen, maybe you can tell us which one we have to listen, and I can try it on the link of this video or podcast.
I'll share it afterwards. I don't know the exact episode.
If there is one piece of advice you would like to give to anyone listening or watching this video, what will be?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I would sort of just recently, I just sort of read something and I think it really stuck with me because I think as founders, I think sometimes you get so immersed in your work and it's work, but it's, you're always trying to create some balance. I read something which was discipline weighs ounces and regrets weigh tons. So I just thought that just a sort of reminder to be disciplined in every aspect of your life. Your health is important. Because if you and I'm saying that because I'm trying to get discipline again. I was pretty good like before February or something, but then I sort of got too focused on work. So I'm trying to get myself back into that to just be disciplined, get help, make sure I'm eating better and exercising more. But I'm sure everybody has that kind of sort of loop that they go through. But yeah, that kind of stuck with me.
And anything you would like to supplement, Oscar?
I don't really have a secret sauce to entrepreneurship, right? But because it is really hard. The one thing that I typically recommend, if I have to focus on one thing, is basically to do things that are bad for you less.
Okay.
It's a simple tip, right?
Yes.
And where listening can learn more about you or about the company, can you share the link if they need to go on LinkedIn, if you have Instagram where you share a lot, or maybe a Twitter, or maybe a blog?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess happier.io, but I guess maybe more specifically academy.happier.io.
Okay.
If you want to do any courses, maybe we can even give like a special deal to your audience.
Yeah, sure.
We can put something in the link. But yeah, I think that's probably the best place to go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. It was a pleasure to have both of you here. It was very cool to discuss about, upskilling, company, recruitment, but also the journey both of you had as an entrepreneur and now working for the Happier Group. So thank you very much for coming today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Watched a lot of your shows, so it was great to finally come and be on it as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish you all the best for the launch of the new platform soon, and also for everything you are doing with Happier Skills.
Awesome. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.